have a scholarship in my room, so it's very special to me. I just want to thank everyone for supporting their public libraries, the most lowercase d democratic of all our institutions. We serve people from cradle to grave, and you just have to walk through the doors of your library. Anybody can walk through those doors and the world is theirs. And I want to get on a soapbox right now. America's public libraries are under siege. Public libraries and public librarians are having their lives threatened. They're resigning in great numbers because of the stress of what's going on. So I want you all to be aware, if you think it can happen here, it can. Nobody ever dreamed that this would happen in the public libraries. So thank you for being the supporters that you are and having the backs of your librarians. And now, what we've all been waiting for. I just want to read one quote that I love, and then I will get off my soapbox. This is a quote from many years ago from Kurt Vonnegut Jr., the great American writer, novelist. So the America I love still exists, if not in the White House, or the Supreme Court, or the Senate, or the House of Representatives, or the media. The America I love still exists at the front desks of our public libraries. And now let's get to know these two amazing women. Beatriz Williams, the New York Times, USA Today, and internationally best-selling author of Our Woman in Moscow, The Summer Wives, Her Last Flight, The Golden Hour, The Secret Life of Violet Grant, 100 Summers, and I could go on, and several other works of historical fiction, including 4 novels in collaboration with fellow best-selling authors, Karen White, who couldn't join us today, and Lord Willig. A graduate, where do you hear these ladies' prayers?
Usually we have a pocket Karen we bring with us, but we forgot.
A graduate, Beatriz, a graduate of Stanford University with an MBA in finance from Columbia, Beatriz's books have won numerous awards and have been translated into more than a dozen languages and appear regularly in bestseller lists around the world. Beatriz. Born in Seattle. Oh, I'm sorry, no, I forgot the last part. Beatriz was born in Seattle, but now lives in Connecticut with her husband and 4 children, where she divides her time between writing and walking. Four kids, small pot for laundry. Lord Willig is the New York Times and USA Today best-selling author of more than 20 works of historical fiction, including Band of Sisters, The Summer Country, The English Wife, the RITA award-winning Pink Carnation series, and I gotta put my specs on that. Incarnation series, and 4 novels co-written with Beatriz Williams and Karen White. Her books have been translated into over 20 languages, picked for the Book of the Month Club, awarded the Rita Bestsellers Books and Golden Leaf Awards, and chosen for the American Library Association's annual list of best genre fiction. An alumna of Yale University, she has a graduate degree from Harvard and a JD from Harvard Law School. She lives in New York City with her husband and 2 young children and vast quantities of coffee. Today. I was telling my granddaughters, they are 5 years old and 8 years old, that I was going to be talking to 2 women who wrote books. And I said, what would you think I should ask them? So the little one, ever the sweet empath that she is, she said, well, Granny, first, I think you should say, I like your books, which I do. And then she wanted to know and each of you please answer this. If you liked Winnie the Pooh when you were little, that's the icebreaker.
Well, I grew up on the, I guess it was late 70s cartoon version. So I was terribly disappointed when I encountered the actual books. I should not be admitting this in a room full of librarians. And I found them much stuffier than the singing roly-poly characters I knew from my back. Anyone else remember those records you got with the illustrated books? That was my Winnie the Pooh. And I can still sing all the songs, but I won't because I like you.
So, I'm not sure. Too much feedback or saucy remarks, who knows?
You're being censored, Beatriz.
So, yeah, no, I actually, my father's British, I should preface that, so we did get a lot of original Winnie the Pooh, but I don't remember it as well as when I was introducing my own kids to Winnie the Pooh, and I started realizing just how clever it was, and yes, there was a lot of the sort of movie versions as well, but just rereading those stories makes you realize how many levels there are to children's books. So yeah, it was funny. I think I really appreciated Winnie the Pooh when I came back to it as an adult reading to my kids.
Thank you. So there's a lot of librarians and readers of historical fiction in this room. So my first question is, we want to know about your research process. Do you do your own research? And do you do your research in a public library?
Well, luckily, what I make as an author allows me to employ about 10 or 12 research assistants. I think I'm kidding.
We all have the history lives.
That was a joke. Now I do my own research, absolutely, and I think, you know, I tend to buy my research books because I want to, I don't want to have to be the embarrassing one who returns my books to the library a year later with the excuse that, oh, I was writing a book about it and I needed the research. So I like to have my research materials with me. But, you know, absolutely, I think, you know, certainly when I was researching things before I had to write books about them, libraries are such a resource. And I think I love especially what takes place here, when you're able to sort of order from a vast number of libraries. So, you know, you're not just, you know, your local library and what your local library affords. You know, you have access to an enormous amount of information. And, you know, I think one of the things I try to do researching is to understand everyone's point of view in a particular historical period. I think that is the value that historical fiction has, is not just the facts and the figures and the battles and the dates and the names, but understanding what it was like to be a human being living in a particular historical period. And that's where, you know, libraries can come in with this vast amount of information that goes beyond just books. But, you know, you get some really good primary source materials as well that have been deposited with libraries. So, you know, yeah, there's so much available that I think the problem for me is, as well as for you, is to figure out how much you can even fit into a work of historical fiction.
Yes, I also do not have 10 assistants at home, much as I like to pretend and answer emails as my own assistant. So I do my own research, but back when I was a baby grad student in the history department of the Evil Crimson Place in Massachusetts, my advisor had a very good piece of advice for me. And the first thing he said was, before you do anything else as a historian, and it also applies to historical fiction authors, make friends with a librarian. And this is really the best advice I have ever gotten in my career, because I would not be able to write the books I write, but for my secret librarian weapon, a very good friend of mine who has found me sources I could never find for myself. So I do my own research. I am a trained researcher, but I will invariably hit a point where there's only so far you can go following up people's footnotes, or where you find that thing you just can't find, or there are things you just can't find. And then I go crying to my amazing librarian friend Vicki and saying things like, I need to know what it would be like to be an English woman visiting Barbados for the first time in 1854. And 2 hours later, despite the fact that Vicki has a full-time job as director of a library, 2 hours later, I will get an email in my inbox with attachment. Here is the diary of a woman, an English woman visiting Barbados for the first time in 1854. I'm like, my God, where do you find these things? But so I am so incredibly grateful to all the magical librarians out there who not only can, curate the collections of books that I can find on myself, but also have this incredible talent for divining sources in impossible places. Thank you.
I think you've all both written lots of books as individuals, so I think we'd like to hear about your collaboration. How did you three women come together, and how did you decide to write books together?
There's a short, I can copy. We do the long one. Just pressing the button and
Here we go. There's a short version and a long version. The short version,
It's the age-old story, 3 authors walk into a bar.
which is actually true. We were at a writer conference and we were kind of commiserating about how lonely it is to be on book tour by yourself, and as we got into the 3rd or 4th glass of wine, we thought, well, we could go on book tour together and it could be like this all the time. And then we realized we have to write a book in order to do so.
At the time, we were several cocktails and 2 bottles of wine in, and this seemed like a great idea. Let's write a book together.
Exactly. We were going to write an anthology set in Scotland, because Scotland sells really well.
And this was right after a certain book, which you may have heard of.
This
had
is
been
the summer of
published.
2012.
That book.
Yes, exactly.
And
so
so
we
called
thought
50 Shades of Grey.
we were going to write a book, an anthology set in Scotland, and it was going to be called 50 Shades of Plaid. This was a thing, right? It could not fail. I mean, Jamie Fraser meets Christian Grey, and didn't know she were harmed. And in the writing of this book,
So we stumbled out of the bar and into the hallway, where, as luck would have it, we ran into Karen's teetotaling editor, who was dead
she
sober.
on water and carrot sticks.
Yes, she doesn't drink coffee.
And so we told her this great idea we had, 50 Shades of Plaid, a sheep anthology, and
I mean, we were just waiting for her to grab
We
a
were-
cocktail
we were-
napkin and write a contract on the spot.
because we were woolly excited about this idea.
I don't need to ram the point now.
And instead, she sort of takes a step back. I don't know, maybe the fumes
I think it was
were a little much. And in her best kindergarten voice, was like, so why don't you 3 go upstairs and drink some aspirin, and we'll talk about this tomorrow.
She also told us, you'll feel better in the morning. Spoiler, we did not feel better in the morning. In fact, we felt a lot worse and very embarrassed, particularly Karen, because this was her editor. Beatrice and I were just hoping
We
she
could
would
slip
remember.
off, and she hopefully would remember who we were. But fast forward, and we thought it was kind of the dregs of winter, and we were kind of reviving it, fun to get together again. And to do so, we needed an excuse. We're like, well, why not write that book we were talking about?
And at the time, we were all writing dual timeline books. You'll remember those Kate Morton-esque books that were so big at the time, where someone in the present delves into the secrets of the past.
I'm still writing those. We're not
Okay,
going
that's right. But we thought, okay, we've done 2 timeline books, why not a 3 timeline book? And then Karen had the brilliant idea of, let's link it to a building. We'll find a building in New York and write 3 interwoven narratives.
And I happen to know a great building where we could use, which we could use as the inspiration, which was my husband's family's home. This was obviously long sold out of the family, or I would not be sitting here writing books for a living. But
Right, Beatrice's mother-in-law gets very upset when we go and do book talks and tell exactly how much it sold for. during the Depression.
Yes, it was a five-figure sum. And then of course now it's worth untold.
Well, I think it sold for 30 million a few years ago.
So my mother-in-law likes me not to talk about that, so I let Lauren do it. But anyway, so we got a beautiful double-fronted mansion on the Upper East Side, and so it became a hospital eventually. So
It's where my parents got their colonoscopies, in case anyone was curious. So it was actually so, we were so devoted to this idea that Karen flew all the way up from Georgia. Beatriz took the train down from Connecticut, and I walked the whole 10 blocks from my apartment. And we met on the Upper East Side to plot out this book idea.
yes, and Lauren and I got there first. Now Karen is in the South, she liked the cold very much. And so she was delayed, I think, just the cold stiffened her limbs or something. It was March, and so we're sitting there and this bear walks into Alice's teacup and then starts taking off its fur. We realized it was actually Karen. And
I had to calm down the tea shop staff.
Called for more tea, warmed her up, and then we started brainstorming this book. And the characters took shape, like we were sitting at the table, and we realized, oh my gosh, this is not something we can do with our ordinary standalone books, but when there's three of us together, three brains working as one, or as we like to call it,
the unibrain. Not to be confused with the unibrow, which we sometimes score.
Yes, we do not need to plug the unibrain, except for ideas. And so we sat and we brainstormed it, got all the chapters outlined, and started writing, each playing one of the characters, and we started writing this book, round robin.
But the thing was, our agents thought this was the worst idea they had ever heard.
I think they still do, despite our book sales.
They
They're
kept
still trying to
saying,
discourage us.
they kept saying anthologies don't sell. And we kept saying, no. This is not an anthology. This is one book. And they would look at us and say, but there are three of you. And we would say, yes, we know, we can count, but it's still one book.
Yes. But lo and behold, and again, long story short here, we did put the book out into the world. Karen's long-suffering editor was the editor for that book. We put the book out, and everyone's surprised, including our own, but especially our editor and agents, made the New York Times bestseller list. And so we're like, this is really exciting, because we can write another one. And go on tour again.
These books are such a joy. And the funny thing is that we all ran a number of books on our own before collaborating. I think if you had asked any of us before that, if we would co-write with anyone, we would have laughed derisively and said, are you crazy? Our characters live in our heads. These are our own private worlds. How do you write with someone else? But the three of us have this special magical chemistry where it's not like work at all. These characters come to life for us, and the books practically write themselves.
It's an amazing creative process, and I think my favorite thing about these books, other than the fact, and we had simple goals. We wanted to go on a book tour together and have our publisher pay for it. We wanted our
particularly our
bar bill, which was growing by the second. And to be able to have it do well enough that we could do it again. And all three were met. We started posting the first day of the book tour, this little photographs on Instagram of our three cocktails. And our publicist was like, oh my gosh, that one post got way more, traction than all your other posts combined. And you should keep doing that every night. And we said, I think,
she's like,
that sounds like a business expense to me. So all our goals were met. And so we started writing the next one. But what I think we love most about this collaboration is the fact that it's like a refresher for our writing palettes. I think it's very easy to get, especially as you get into the double digits with how many books you put out. This is a way to make it new again and fresh again and get to meet each other. Although Lauren did forget to wear her sheep pin. I remember. Okay, I'm the only one wearing a sheep pin.
You took it for the team.
I took it for the team. But I think to me that is the best part. And I would say this, that we were very good friends when we started writing these books. And now we are like sisters. I think with every book, we get closer and closer.
Absolutely, and our published output is nothing to the length of the epic text chain the three of us have going, which after our deaths will be published in a 20-volume set, heavily edited.
We're bound. Collector's items. We'll pre-sign before we die.
Quick question. So I've read your collaborative novels. Do each of you take one character?
Yeah, so we plot out.
There are three characters in these books.
So partly it worked so well, and that we stumbled on entirely by accident in a caffeinated tea haze, was that we plot out the whole book together. The entire book, beginning to end, we come up with all the characters, and only when we have got that full chapter by chapter outline do we say, okay, who's doing which character?
And it's funny how that's not bad a process at all. It's sort of like, well, I think by the end of that process, we each have a sense of like which character is really speaking to us. And it can be counterintuitive. I mean, we also try to mess with people. Like our editor still can't really figure out who writes what. The last one we turned in, she got it wrong.
Well, that was one of the amazing things with this experience, was when we turned in that first book, we all had very distinct voices. And we thought that our editor would be able to tell with no issue at all who had written which character. And then she went and she sent back the wrong edits to the wrong author. So we thought, okay, she doesn't drink caffeine, she's a little slow, it's fine, it was just her. But then we switched publishing houses and we moved to Beatrice's longtime editor.
And she couldn't figure out which part we couldn't. And I thought that was amazing because, like, you walk into a nursery, you hear your child crying in a crowded room, you know it's your child. And I felt a little miffed at first. I was like, how can you not know my voice? But I think we also did a really good job of like,
well, once we realized when that first book came out, we started getting emails from readers saying, wait, I know which one you wrote. And it would almost invariably be wrong. And we thought this was such great fun. And so by the time we sat down and wrote the second book, first of all, we tried to deliberately choose characters that played against type. And second, we started planting red herrings. So if you see a reference to one of Beatrice's longtime characters, it might be because Beatrice has written that chapter, or it might not. It might be because we all read each other's books and we can pretend to be each other very effectively.
Or you might think that the Southern character is Karen's character because she's Southern. But maybe we already knew that you were going to think that Karen had written that character. So we deliberately had Karen not write that character. Or we know that you are librarians and you are very smart people. You would already know that we had done the switcheroo. So maybe Karen did write the Southern character. Or
maybe all of the novels have iocane powder in them.
Princess Bride. Okay.
I want to ask about writing authentic dialogue. For example, I'm not going to go into the million words that are in all of these different things. I had to look up what rogues were, what rogues are. So it's a combination of historical research and creating a dialogue. You've got a Southern woman in All the Way You Said Goodbye, Peaches, who lives at the Ritz in Paris.
Maybe Karen wrote that character and maybe
not.
So how do you create authentic dialogue? How do you do that? It's so good.
So I think it's partly that we all grew up with a lot of music. And I think that a musical ear is part of it. Is just being able to just notice these subtle variations in voice. And also, so when I was in college, I was an anthropology major, which my parents were so proud. I'm excited about that. And none of that, I would spend, when I was supposed to be studying, I would go, my university town had this old movie palace that had been restored by some internet gazillionaire and would show for at cost, because it was a nonprofit, would show old movies. And I would go in there for a double feature. This is what a weird kid I was, and just like get popcorn and the chicken sandwich from the Burger King across the street and a Coke and get $5 for a double feature. And I would watch like 2 Billy Wilder films back to back. And, you watch enough of these and the mannerisms and dialogue and the rhythms of life and speech just kind of get implanted in your brain. So I am so excited to know that now I was not actually wasting time by going off studying for finals by going to the movies. That was such an integral part of my preparation for my work now as a novelist, writing historical fiction in the first part of the 20th century, that, I couldn't have done anything more important. It was like a whole major.
Yes, like Catherine Morland, you were in training to be a novelist.
I was.
Or sorry, you're trained to be a heroine. For me, I think my great tutor in terms of dialogue was Georgette Heyer. Are there any other Georgette Heyer fans in the audience? The mother of the Regency romance? And I remember being, in 5th or 6th grade, reading Georgette Heyer. I already knew I wanted to be a writer when I grew up, and I was studying my craft. And I had that light bulb moment when I realized how different her different characters' dialogue was. Not just the obvious things like some characters use slang, servants speak in exaggerated Somerset drawls, but also that the rhythm of the individual character's speech was all different. That the fox speaks like this, don't you know? Sometimes in incomplete sentences. That the prosy boor speaks in long run-on sentences. That the sensible heroine speaks in perfectly ordered sentences that have a beginning, a middle, and an end. And that you could take away every single dialogue tag in the book, and you would still know exactly who was speaking. And for me, that's always been my goal, to have my characters' voices within the same book be so distinct that if you took away everything, you would always know exactly which character was speaking at any given time, not because of the content of what they're saying, although that matters too, but because of the rhythm and cadence of their voice.
Yeah, I think voice is really one of the most valuable tools we have, if not the most valuable tool in the toolbox. That's how you show who the character is, so that you don't need to tell the reader who the character is. Easy one. Do you travel to the places you write about?
I feel like I had sort of 2 separate lives as an author. One of those, so I was a published author for 10 years before I had kids. And in those 10 glorious child-free years, I would pop on a plane to Paris to research a book set there. I went to Barbados to research a book I was thinking of writing set on Barbados. And I didn't at the time. I wrote it 10 years later when I couldn't go there. And then I had kids. And suddenly my relationship with my very good librarian friend became much more important because I couldn't go places anymore. And I'm sure Beatriz will have more to say on this topic, but it's a mixed bag. Because as a historical fiction writer, so often what you are looking for doesn't exist anymore. And there are times when it can almost be more confusing walking down the street, searching for the traces of something that's been obliterated, than never going there at all.
Yeah, I would absolutely agree. Welcome to my world. Like, I've always written with kids in the house, multiple kids, and being able to travel for research was just not an option for me. I tended to pick cities where I had already been as a wild, crazy, child-free 20-something. Or places that I was just familiar with. A lot of my books are set in the Northeast, and that's because that's where I spend most of my time. But I would agree absolutely. When I was writing about Cocoa Beach in the 1920s, there's really not much point in visiting Cocoa Beach in the 2000s and 2010s, because it's completely changed. It's not even the same geography anymore. So I think that you really have to use your imagination and read accounts of people who were there at the time and can describe it for you, or old maps. I'm a big map person. I could spend hours studying maps and actually do a lot of the time. So,
And it's always such a triumph when you write a book set someplace you've never been. I wrote one set in Hyderabad in India, and you'll have people come up to you and say, I grew up there. You rendered it perfectly. And that is really the best feeling. And that's when you know your sources led you in the right direction.
Is there, you've written about lots of different historical eras. Is there an era you have not yet written about that you are thinking about writing about collaboratively?
No, we can't reveal our secrets. Our next, I will say this. Our next Willig White and Williams collaboration, title to be revealed soon once we have one.
Yes, we'll be taking suggestions and votes later.
Yes, our original suggestion was torpedoed by the sales and marketing people. No, I don't think we can because I'm still feeling
It's not happening.
yeah, it's not gonna happen. But anyway, the point is it's actually all set, it's all contemporary set.
Wow.
So it's set in the modern day, which was kind of, I mean, we did some pieces of contemporary things, but for the entire book to be set in the modern day was a new one for us. And interestingly, my scandal that comes out next summer is primarily set in the modern day with one historical narrative. So I don't know, it's a bit of a shift. I think we all need a bit of a creative reset once in a while to kind of, keep everything getting stale.
All of your books feature very strong female protagonists. What inspires you? How do you make those strong females happen?
Well, I think strong women have always been there in every era in history. And so for me, I went to an all-girls school. So my world was entirely comprised of women. And our headmistress was one of those wonderful old battle axes with an iron spine and a Laura Ashley dress. And I went on from there to do, Beatriz, I had a very useful and practical major in college. I was a Renaissance studies major, which meant I spent my time reading about the female monarchs of the Renaissance, which was a time period where you had more women on the throne than men. You had Elizabeth I, you had Catherine de Medici, and my personal favorite, who no one has ever heard of, the mother of Mary, Queen of Scots, Marie de Guise, who ruled Scotland a hell of a lot better than her daughter from her husband's death up until 1560. And I mean, she pissed off John Knox so much he wrote an angry pamphlet about her. So it always frustrates me, poor Beatriz, she's heard this soapbox before, when people assume that it's been a linear progression, that in the past women were quiet and oppressed, and only now are we starting to fight and come into our own. No, we've been through this again and again and again. There have always been strong and powerful women in history. A friend of mine wrote her dissertation on female merchants of the Middle Ages who were running businesses involving ships sailing to far-flung places, even though legally, yes, technically they couldn't own property, but they did. Women have always done, they've always run things, they've run sieges, they've headed armies. And I think the idea that women didn't in the past is just part of a vast rewriting of history designed to make it seem like male leadership is a norm, when in fact it's not. Women have been running things for centuries.
I think a strong woman is certainly not something we invented, and it's a bit sort of culturally narcissistic of us to think that it is. Women have always been strong and have had to get things done. And I think writing about the things, I think one of my favorite things that anyone said about my books was that, it's just, my specialty is exploring the ways women have, paraphrasing here, have lived their lives and have lived the best lives they could given the limitations of whatever period they're living in. And to me, that is the great strength of women, that we are so good at playing the cards we're dealt. And I love writing about that. I love writing about the ways in which women took what was given to them, because, I try to think of my characters always, and my books is not, my characters, it's not historical fiction. For my characters, this is contemporary fiction. This is their world. They have no foreknowledge of what is to come. They do not, necessarily see themselves in relation to the past, they see their lives as what is modern, you know, to them it's modern. And so I love exploring the ways in which characters lived lives in the period in which, you know, they were born and lived and died.
Okay, I see Mimi giving me the cut, so I have something I love to do called the lightning round. Quick answers. What are you reading now?
Right now, I'm rereading Georgette Hayer's The Talisman Ring, one of my favorites.
And I'm just about to start it as a book I was just given to preview before it comes out and provide we call it blurring in the business. And it's called The Berlin Letters, and it's set in East Germany, Berlin during the Cold War.
Favorite book from your childhood?
Harlan Cohen's Through a Glass Darkly. One of those big doorstop historical fiction set in England in the 18th century around various Jacobite rebellions.
And quite the plot twist in there as well.
Oh my gosh, yes.
That opened my eyes. As a young queen, I was like, oh,
here.
my goodness,
Well, I didn't understand it.
that was not on my bingo card for this book. Yes, I'm not going to say childhood sex had so many, like the Black Stallion series for me. Yeah, I know, like I was a big horse girl. But I would say the book that I read in college that changed everything for me in terms of what I'm interested in history was Vera Brittain's Testament of Youth.
Favorite vacation spot?
Upstate New York, the Hudson Valley.
I'm not just saying this because it's New Jersey, but my mother-in-law grew up summering in Rumson, and she still goes every summer, and we go. And at first, I thought it was just kind of boring sitting on the beach. Now I'm like, I can't wait to sit around the beach.
Favorite junk food?
Actually a tough one.
No, it is not. Other than chocolate is a given, but like if you're talking about my kryptonite junk food, it is without question Ruffles, cheddar, and sour cream tomato chips. Eat the whole bag.
This is savory, I'm the sweet. For me, any kind of cookie.
Cake or pie?
Cake, absolutely cake.
Wow, pie.
She's a fruit-based things.
Texting or talking?
Depends on the day and the circumstances. Definitely on an airplane, texting rather than talking, because we all sat next to that person who's made the other decision.
Yes. You know, it's funny, I love the convenience of texting, but I have recently rediscovered, like, oh, I can actually call this person. And we can settle in like 2 minutes, whatever, and talk, like really, you know, so I'm rediscovering, you know, the voice call.
That's true, you did that just the other day. You called me.
I know you were like, Beatriz? Did you press the wrong button? I was like, no, I thought we could just talk. True story.
Favorite period in history?
The 18th century.
See, now, once you study, I'm not good at these lightning rounds because I'm always a hedger of bets. I mean, to study or to live in?
Let's have the complicated.
Okay, oh, right. I'm gonna go, well, I'll say 1920s.
How many cups of coffee do you drink a day?
3, that's the caffeinated ones.
I think I try to stick to about 3 as well. That's the pot I make, and I'm sticking to it.
I think Mimi's gonna come and choke me, so. I want to thank you both so much. To take away with them on this fine day.
A massive thank you for having us here, but even more so for all you do for readers everywhere. Thank you.
I would say the same. One, we have a no conflict policy. We right now between cake versus pie, but yes, the same. You know, we appreciate you all so much, not just for you know, all you do to encourage people to read our books, but all you do to encourage people to read books at all, and to provide that wonderful, welcoming space for people of all ages and backgrounds to come together and discover the joys of reading.
Okay, thank you again. Go ahead and hardcovers, paperbacks, autograph, holiday time, they make great gifts.
We will sign anything, including other people's books.
Yes, I have 4 kids to put through college, so any book sales are very much appreciated.
Hello. Before we get them to the book signing table, we would like to present each of our visiting authors an honorary library card. So, are you going to go? Library Champion Annual Friends Brunch, October 16, 2020. And Lauren is saying, so hers says Lauren Willig, Library Champion, Friends Annual Brunch, 2023. These are for you. We would like to thank you. Thank you for everything and all the preparation that you put in. So thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, in about 10 more minutes, we will be calling the door prizes. If you have not had a chance, the blue tickets that are in your program, the blue strip tickets that are 6, there are different, it says on the label, door prize. So please do select your tickets. There are raffle buckets that you can put them in. Also, we are taking credit card payments for the books. If you have a credit card payment that you would like to charge your books, certainly go over to the sales table. The authors are here till about 2 o'clock. So if you like your book off autograph, please do go up to the sales table. Thank you.